In our headlines on this Thursday, December 11th, here in South Korea, a filibuster is underway at the National Assembly amid the first plenary meeting of its December extraordinary session as the main opposition party finds fault with the ruling party's drive for judicial reform. Meanwhile, President Lee Jae-myung today convenes his administration's first briefing of government agency operations, starting with the Ministry of Economy and Finance. And the US Federal Reserve cuts its benchmark interest rate by 0.25 percentage points, lowering the federal funds rate to between 3.5% and 3.75%. The Parliament's December extraordinary session opened its first plenary meeting today, and it's being dominated by a filibuster launched by the main opposition party against the ruling party's judicial reform drive. Our political correspondent Moon Hae-ryan has the latest.
Proceedings for the December session opened with yet another marathon filibuster as lawmakers clashed over judicial reform and the handling of routine bills. Thursday's plenary session began with a long-delayed vote on the Fair Transactions in Franchise Business Act, postponed earlier when the Assembly adjourned mid-filibuster. After its passage, lawmakers moved on to the rest of the agenda. The People Power Party then launched a new filibuster, beginning with amendments to the Criminal Procedure Act, which includes provisions for expanded access to lower court rulings. PPP floor leader Song Won-seok reaffirmed the party's plan to filibuster in protest of the Democratic Party's judicial reform push.
The nature of the 8 evil bills is clear. Creating a special tribunal for insurrection cases and establishing a new judicial distortion offense are blatant violations of the separation of powers and judicial independence. Expanding the number of Supreme Court justices and abolishing the Court Administration Office appear to be unjustified attempts to reshape the judiciary to fit the administration's preferences.
The DP criticized the move, saying that the PPP had once again demonstrated its lack of willingness to cooperate.
This is not lawmaking. It is holding people's livelihoods hostage. The Democratic Party will fulfill its responsibilities to the end. No matter how much they try to obstruct us, we will keep moving forward for the sake of the people.
2 more bills remain on the agenda: amendments to the Banking Act and the Act on the Performance of Duties by Police Officers. These amendments cover limits on banks' use of extra fees on interest rates and new police authority in border areas. Under National Assembly rules, a filibuster can only be terminated after 24 hours have elapsed and at least 3/5 of lawmakers vote in favor. With each item requiring a separate vote to end each filibuster, the remaining bills are expected to pass by the 14th. Moon Hae-ryan, Arirang News.
And it's been 6 months since the Lee Jae-myung administration took office, and today the president partook in the first briefing of government operations, starting with the Ministry of Economy and Finance. Our correspondent Park Jun-han reports.
The economy was chosen by President Lee Jae-myung as his first topic to be briefed on in the first round of ministerial briefings started by his administration. But before going into the details, Lee opened the meeting by emphasizing the importance of public service above all.
정말 운명적으로 중요한 지점이잖아요. 지금 대한민국이 그런 분수령 또는 분기점에 서 있는 것 같습니다. 우리 공직자 여러분들의 이 나라의 미래도 달려 있고 여러분 다음 세대들의 삶도 달려 있다. 이렇게 생각하고 책임감을 가지고 열심히 해 주실 것으로 확실히 믿습니다.
Following President Lee's opening speech, the Ministry of Economy and Finance started the session, evaluating the government's economic achievements over the past 6 months and how the ministry would move forward to bring meaningful changes next year.
The administration has pushed forward key economic measures, including emergency response efforts, a swift supplementary budget, a new growth strategy, tariff agreements, tax system normalization, and the timely passage of the 2026 budget. As a result, growth reached a 15-quarter high, and the KOSPI surpassed 4,000 points, with broader signs of recovery across the economy.
However, the finance minister did mention some hardships lying ahead. For example, South Korea's economy faces multiple challenges, including a decline in potential growth rate, polarization, and latent risks in the foreign exchange and real estate markets. The government has announced it will proactively pursue key tasks, including making 2026 the first year of a major leap forward. Starting from Thursday, President Yi will also receive work reports covering 228 public institutions and related organizations, including 19 ministries, 5 agencies, 18 commissions, and 7 committees. 박준환, Arirang News.
President Lee Jae-myung will play host to his Lao counterpart Thongloun Sisoulith next Monday. According to presidential spokesperson Kang Yoo-jung, the Lao president and his spouse will begin a 2-day official visit to South Korea this coming Sunday at the invitation of President Lee Jae-myung. On the summit agenda are trade and security, as well as cooperation against online scams. The summit between the two leaders comes in line with this year's 30th anniversary of the re-establishment of diplomatic ties between South Korea and Laos. Unification Minister Chung Dong-young has reaffirmed his intentions to pursue engagement with Pyongyang in the new year. Our correspondent Oh Seong covers his remarks.
South Korea will renew its push to reopen talks with North Korea next year, anticipating major regional shifts with the upcoming US-China summit. On Wednesday, Unification Minister Chung Dong-young held an off-camera conference with correspondents, setting the tone for his priorities next year, saying he will strive to turn 2026 into a base year for peace and coexistence. On promoting dialogue with Pyongyang, he pointed to a major diplomatic event, the April meeting between US President Donald Trump and his counterpart Xi Jinping in Beijing, noting that the two leaders could influence North Korea's strategic calculations and set the tone for regional engagement. Chung said Seoul must be ready if Pyongyang recalibrates its position and allows even a minimal opening for contact, particularly as North Korea enters a period of internal reassessment ahead of its 9th Party Congress, reflecting on economic direction and external partnerships. Minister Chung said the South must be proactive in the coming months, not wait for external momentum. According to Chung, this includes lowering confrontation, restoring basic trust, and signaling a clear policy direction based on peaceful coexistence, not the North's subjugation. Chung said revising military posture and lowering confrontation are part of that. He pointed to past cases, noting that the suspension of team spirit in the early 1990s and the delay of South Korea-US combined exercises in 2018 contributed to diplomatic openings. He noted here that military drills are a means, not the purpose. On dealing with North Korea's nuclear program, Chung said the most urgent task is slowing further expansion. He listed 3 immediate priorities: stopping the Yeonbyung reactor, halting the increase in North Korea's warhead stockpile, and freezing uranium enrichment. However, the minister rejected arguments for stronger sanctions or pressure, saying North Korea's nuclear and missile advances have historically accelerated during periods of isolation. Seeking international cooperation on promoting peace on the peninsula, Chung added that Seoul is also widening its diplomatic network, including asking the European Union to consider appointing a special envoy for the Korean peninsula. Oh Seong, Arirang News.
And the U.S. House of Representatives has passed a defense policy bill that restricts military retreat from South Korea, easing months of speculation about a potential reduction in the size of American soldiers stationed here on the Korean peninsula. Our Eun-jin reports.
The U.S. House of Representatives voted to pass a $901 billion defense policy bill on Wednesday for the next fiscal year. The bill's passage on a 312 to 112 vote comes at a time of increasing friction between the Republican-controlled Congress and President Donald Trump's administration over the management of the military. While much of the over 3,000-page bill aligns with President Trump's national security agenda, the U.S. National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA, reportedly stipulates that the authorized budget may not be used to unilaterally reduce the number of U.S. troops stationed in South Korea below the current level of 28,500. This is the first time in 5 years since the first Trump administration for this measure to reappear in the annual bill. The bill also specifically states that funds allocated under the act may not be used to complete the transfer of wartime operational control from the United States to South Korea in a manner that deviates from the mutually agreed upon plan. Overall, the NDAA calls for a 3.8% pay raise for many military members, as well as housing and facility improvements on military bases. The bill also provides $400 million in military assistance to Ukraine in each of the next 2 years, and includes other measures reinforcing the U.S. commitment to Europe's defense. Lawmakers also included a provision that would withhold a quarter of Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's travel budget until the Pentagon provides Congress with unedited video of the strikes against alleged drug boats near Venezuela. Having passed the House, the bill is expected to pass in the Senate next week before it lands on President Donald Trump's desk, which the president has said he will sign. The NDAA is one of a few major pieces of legislation to make it through Congress every year, and lawmakers take pride in having passed it annually since 1961. 이은진, 아리랑 뉴스.
In other news, the Foreign Ministry here is seeking a prompt execution of the new agreement between South Korea and the U.S. that permits the former to enrich uranium and reprocess spent nuclear fuel for peaceful purposes. Now, intentions to this end were shared by Second Vice Foreign Minister Kinsella upon arrival in Washington, D.C. back on Wednesday for the 10th Senior Economic Dialogue with U.S. Under-Secretary of State for Economic Affairs Jacob Hellberg. Last month, the Trump administration shared support for the process that opens up South Korea's civil uranium enrichment and spent fuel reprocessing. Visa waiver travelers to the U.S. may soon be required to provide the Trump administration with access to 5 years of their social media history. Our Lee Seung-jae explains.
The Trump administration is moving to tighten screening for travelers entering the United States through the ESTA visa waiver program. ESTA stands for Electronic System for Travel Authorization, which allows citizens of eligible countries to visit the United States for up to 90 days without a visa. A new notice posted Wednesday by U.S. Customs and Border Protection outlines a proposal that would require applicants to submit social media information from the past 5 years. The agency says it's seeking public comment for 60 days on the plan. The proposal stems from an executive order President Donald Trump signed in January to strengthen protections against foreign terrorists and other national security threats. If implemented, the changes would significantly widen the scope of information reviewed during the travel authorization process. According to the notice, social media accounts would become a mandatory part of every ESTA application. CBP is also considering the addition of what it calls several high-value data fields. These include personal and business phone numbers used in the last 5 years, email addresses used in the last 10 years, and detailed information about applicants' family members, including names, dates, and places of birth, residences, and phone numbers. The agency would also have the authority to request biometric data when needed, including fingerprints, DNA, and iris scans. Another major change is the plan to decommission the current ESTA website and shift all applications to a mobile app, which would become the exclusive platform for submitting new requests. Public comments on the proposal must be submitted by February 9th. Once the review period closes, the administration is expected to move ahead with implementation. If approved, the new requirements would mark one of the most extensive expansions of data collection in the history of the visa waiver program. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The U.S. Federal Reserve has further lowered its benchmark interest rate by a 0.25 percentage point, marking its third reduction in a row this year. Our An Sung-jin covers this latest cut.
The U.S. Federal Reserve has cut its benchmark interest rate by 0.25 percentage points, bringing the rate to its lowest level in more than 3 years. It announced on Wednesday that Federal Open Market Committee had lowered the federal funds rate from the previous 3.75 to 4% range to 3.5 to 3.75%. The Fed's decision marks the third consecutive rate cut since September, lowering the rate by a total of 0.75 percentage points this year. It cited an uncertain economy, including a slowdown in employment growth rate as well as rising inflation. Of the 12 voting members, 9 supported the decision while 3 opposed. The Chicago Fed president and Kansas City Fed president argued that the policy rate be left unchanged, while board member Christopher Waller, a close ally of U.S. President Donald Trump, pushed for a deeper 0.5 percentage point reduction.
Everyone around the table at the FOMC agrees that inflation is too high and that we want it to come down. Where the difference is how do you weight those risks and what does your forecast look like?
Regarding future rate cuts, the Fed used more cautious language, saying it would consider the extent and timing of additional adjustments. As the U.S. benchmark rate fell to 3.75% following the Fed's latest decision, the rate gap with South Korea has narrowed to 1.25 percentage points, based on the upper limit of the U.S. rate range. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump spoke about the Fed's decision.
I mean, this guy, the head of the Federal Reserve, is a stiff. He did a rather small number that could have been doubled, at least doubled.
On Wall Street, attention is now shifting to who will become the next Fed chair, with Kevin Hassett, head of the White House National Economic Council, considered as a leading candidate. The finalists could come as early as later this month. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, in the latest development with regard to the data leak of nearly 34 million users of e-commerce giant Coupang, its CEO Park Tae-jun has tendered his resignation. Our Park Gonu reports.
11 days after Coupang's massive data leak came to light, the company's CEO Park Tae-jun stepped down on Wednesday, saying he would take responsibility. While some see the move as effectively a dismissal, for now Harold Rogers, CEO and general counsel of the firm's U.S. headquarters, Coupang Inc., will take over temporarily to stabilize operations and calm customers down. That comes as civic groups, including the Korea Consumer Federation, held a press conference on Wednesday announcing that they filed for collective dispute mediation, seeking compensation of up to around $340 per person. And as the fallout grows, South Korea's Prime Minister Kim Min-seok, during a national policy coordination meeting on Wednesday, spoke firmly on how the government will deal with the case.
In a digital society, protecting people's personal information is the most fundamental responsibility of platform companies. The government will conduct a swift and thorough investigation into the cause of the incident and take strict action against any violations of the law. We'll also thoroughly prepare institutional reforms.
The Prime Minister's office also announced plans to reinforce information security systems and expand executive accountability, shifting from a reactive approach to a preventive one. As the Personal Information Protection Commission, working under a joint public and private investigation team, looks into whether Coupang violated mandatory safety measure requirements related to the leak, the Commission spoke on Wednesday about how the company should revise its clauses.
As Coupang's terms of service are unclear about the company's liability and burden of proof for damages caused by intent or negligence, creating confusion for users, we requested that Coupang revise the clauses.
The Commission also said it had asked Coupang to simplify its overly complicated membership withdrawal process. Although these measures are recommendations rather than mandatory orders, Coupang is required to submit the results of its actions within 7 days. Police also continued their search and seizure investigation at Coupang's headquarters on Wednesday morning, marking the second day of the raid after officers spent 10 hours on site the day before. Investigators say more time is needed as the massive data has been difficult to secure, given that the leak is believed to have taken place over several months. Park Gonu, Arirang News.
Also on the local front, Oceans and Fisheries Minister Chun Chae-soo has resigned in response to allegations of bribery. Speaking to reporters on this Thursday, Chun claimed the accusations were absurd and unfounded. Nonetheless, he added it was appropriate for him to step down for the benefit of the current administration and the ministry. The presidential office, for its part, has said that the president will accept the resignation. Chun is alleged to have received money and valuables from the Unification Church in return for his support behind the construction of an undersea tunnel between South Korea and Japan.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. U.S. President Donald Trump has said American forces have seized an oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela as tensions escalate between Trump and Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. The U.S. Coast Guard, supported by the Navy, carried out the seizure on Wednesday, with personnel transported by helicopter from the USS Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier. A day earlier, U.S. fighter jets flew over the Gulf of Venezuela in their closest pass to the country's airspace during the current pressure campaign against Maduro. It remains unclear who owns the tanker or what flag it was sailing under. Trump said the U.S. would, quote, keep the oil abroad. Staying with Venezuela, opposition leader Maria Corina Machado was absent from Wednesday's Nobel Peace Prize ceremony in Oslo. Her daughter Ana Karina Sosa accepted the award as Machado said she could not arrive in time. The Wall Street Journal reports she left Venezuela by sea for Curaçao with U.S. support on Tuesday, and the AP reports that she has now arrived in Oslo, where she greeted supporters from a hotel balcony early on Thursday. Machado has been in hiding since January, when she was briefly detained after joining a protest in Caracas, a day before President Nicolas Maduro was sworn in following a disputed election. She was awarded the Nobel Prize for her work promoting democratic rights in Venezuela. In Morocco on Wednesday, 2 adjacent 4-story buildings collapsed overnight in the city of Fez, killing 22 people. Authorities said 16 others were injured and taken to hospital, and the neighborhood was evacuated. The buildings, constructed in 2006, housed 8 families. Officials said the cause remains unclear and an investigation is underway. In the UK, best-selling author Sophie Kinsella has died at 55, her family said on Wednesday. Kinsella, known for the Shopaholic series of books, was diagnosed in 2022 with glioblastoma, an aggressive brain cancer. Her books have sold more than 50 million copies worldwide and been translated into over 40 languages. Writers including Jojo Moyes, Jodi Picoult, and Adele Parks paid tribute, while her publisher said she leaves, quote, a unique voice and a significant literary legacy. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
Snow made a return along the East Coast this afternoon and will continue into tomorrow morning. In particular, the mountainous areas and the East Coast areas of Gangwon-do Province could see more than 10 centimeters of heavy snow. Southern areas like Busan warmed up to 17 degrees Celsius today, as warm as early April. However, from tonight, as cold air moves in, temperatures in many areas will drop below freezing tomorrow morning. A cold wave advisory will be in effect for parts of the western regions starting from 9 p.m. tonight. Most areas will start off below 0 degrees, with Seoul at -3 degrees, Gwangju and Daegu at -2 degrees. Highs will rise up to 6 degrees in Seoul and Chuncheon, 10 degrees in Gwangju and Busan. On Saturday, another round of nationwide rain and snow is on the way, with up to 5 centimeters of snow forecast in Seoul. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world. Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session.